What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark from ActTheMovieGuy.com, and it's another anniversary that I'm doing. It's the 40th anniversary of 16 Candles. So John Hughes fans, strap in, because he wrote and directed this, and this has audio description on Amazon Prime. I think this is elevated TTS audio description. This is an elevated AI voice. I could be wrong. I've felt this before. I know that Amazon's trying to improve their voices to where it's like sort of indistinguishable. It's not a voice I recognized. It felt sometimes like it cut off a couple of the words. But I'm not saying it couldn't be human. So, which is scary. I'm also not saying it's my favorite audio description performance, but they lowered the bar so so very bad on so many films that I know what absolute ass sounds like from them. So good for them for making it a little bit harder for me to figure out, is this a robot? Um, but we're here to talk about Molly Ringwald and her 16 Candles. So, and a lot of other things. This is actually my first time watching 16 Candles. Fun fact. I'm not an 80s kid. If I look that old, damn you. Damn you. Um, I'm wearing a Hakuna Matata shirt. Anyway, yeah, so I didn't grow up on 16 Candles. I was a baby when this movie was released. So it's not my teenage childhood, and I think it's not my coming of age. But it's somebody's, and I respect that. And I respect that because I can see how Molly Ringwald for girls in this time period was exactly what she represented. And sort of like, for some reason, Freddie Prinze Jr. was in like a bunch of movies for us around our time period. Like, he was just sort of like prolific, like everywhere you turned. I'm not going to say like Freddie Prinze Jr. represented my teen movies, but if somebody younger than me thought that, I would be like, yeah, that's valid. Yeah, feels like he did. So I don't know, he's in everything. So yeah, she plays Sam, who is a 15-year-old turning 16, whose birthday is forgotten by literally everybody in this weird sort of like universe, which everyone would forget her birthday for some reason. Like, like no one, all her whole family is just like, what day is it? I don't know. Why are you so pissy? I don't know. Is this a different day? So, okay, I guess it's not then. And she's got a brother, and she's got a two-parent household, and then she comes home and like her grandparents are there. And it seems like one of those like setups that you're watching as it happens, and you're like, is this like some secret birthday party they're about to throw her? Because like, why would the grandparents all be here all of a sudden? Oh no, it's not. It's tied to this whole other thing with this like wedding that they have to go to, and she's dressed up for, and bridesmaids and stuff like that. There's like this whole other subplot, but it does kind of feel like for a moment that maybe this movie will like turn it around for you, and the family will be like, by the way, we remembered. Surprise! But that's not what happens. Um, Instead, normal teen shenanigans happens. It's interesting that this movie's PG. I know this is benefiting from the time period of the beginning of PG-13 and the onset of PG-13. I think this movie would be PG-13 on a second pass. I think if the MPAA was forced to re-rate this film, I don't think it would stay PG. There's just too much stuff. Teen drinking and stuff like that is just not going to stay in a PG-rated movie. It's just not. So, it benefits from its 1984 release date, is what I'm saying. And the fact that we were just getting into that rating and just starting with, Indiana Jones and Red Dawn and some of this stuff. And those were those were getting rated a little bit more because of violence. That was when we used to actually look at violence and go, you know what? Our kids might not be, probably shouldn't be watching this. But it's not that bad, but it is a little violent. But it might be a little bit much for like an 8-year-old, you know? Nowadays, we're just, it's like, we're all worried about the other stuff. It's all about the, you know, how many fucks do you have in a movie? Or, you know, what's your sexual content? And you can make like these violent and extreme and scary horror movies, and all of them can be rated PG-13. But man, if you drop the F-bomb twice, radar. That's a bridge too far, my good sir. And speaking of a bridge too far, if you didn't think I wasn't going to address the fact that this film is incredibly problematic, you would be wrong, because I am. It is extremely problematic, and I'm willing to overlook a lot of things that most people will not with this film, especially if I tried to show this to like a Gen Alpha. A Gen Alpha person would probably murder me. They would be like, are you kidding right now? Did you hear what he just said? And it's like, yeah, actually, that's how people talked back in those days. So, as offensive as some of these words are, and you're like shocked to hear them like just openly being thrown around by teenagers in a 1984 film, it's very valid. As a kid who grew up in the 90s, yeah, they were still being used in the 90s. So maybe somewhere along the way, everybody got them expunged from high school. I don't know. I don't currently go to high school, so I don't know. But if you guys got rid of those words, great. Good for you. But if it would accurately represent your high school to have those words in there, and everybody's not as, warm and caring, and all the bullies are not actually gone, then they should stay. As hard it is to hear those words and perpetuate awful stereotypes, you have to look at what characters are using them and when they're using them and the context in which you're using them. And in the 80s, teens would have said these words. However, and this is what I'm not letting John Hughes off the hook for, and one of those things where we can't go and say, it was a different time. It was a different time. It was a different time. That only gets you just so far in life, That only gets you just so far. Occasionally you have to look back and go, yeah, that was too much. I apologize for that. You have to, obviously John Hughes can't do that because he's dead. But I feel like if he wasn't, he might apologize for what I'm about to call him out on. And I feel very comfortable calling him out on it. And that's Long Duck Dong. Now, it's bad enough that that's his name. And the representation and this, all that kind of stuff. But the gong that is hit every single time that man appears on screen, that is racist. That is an absolute, hands down, inappropriate thing to have in this movie. It wouldn't have aged much better. If I'd seen this in the 90s, I think I would have been like, what's up with that? What's up? And definitely by like the 2000s, I'd have been like, okay, that makes me uncomfortable. And I was like really uncomfortable with they do it over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And I'm like, this kid's name is already bad enough as it is. And then you have to hit a fucking gong to like bring home the Asian joke. Like, it's just, no, that doesn't age well. He's a supporting character. I don't want to gauge the entire movie. I don't think he represented the movie for really the group at which this film was intended. I don't think there were Asians in the 80s that looked at this film and saw that character and was like, this movie's going to be great for us, and then walked into 16 Candles and were like, ooh, fuck this movie. I don't think that was the thing. I think this movie catered to girls who looked at Molly Ringwald and were like, she speaks to me. And yeah, I think she probably did. I think in that. But the problem is that along the way, they got to pick up this weird sort of uh, racist trope along the way that just, like, let's laugh at this. This is funny. It's not actually funny. It's just it's a really low bar joke. It's it shouldn't have worked then and it doesn't work now. It's like I was watching Hacks and they're talking about like never apologize for a joke, and then she goes back and actually rewatches some of the jokes, and she takes that back. She's like, yeah, some of those jokes actually uh, were inappropriate, uh, even when I said them, and some of the stuff is actually inappropriate even when we did these things in the movies. Some of the things you can say that was the time period. You know what I'm saying? Like, there there are going to be films where women just kind of stay at home and they don't have jobs and they don't have lives and dreams, because basically that was what happened back in the day, And then you started making the career woman stuff. But for a long time, women just kind of hung out and looked hot and made cookies and did things. And there's like a whole slew of those TV shows where they were just the TV mom, and that was it. They didn't do anything. And then they changed. And when they started changing, so did women in the real world. Actually, they had already sort of changed, was forcing the change on TV because it was like they were holding back. But at no point was this gong appropriate. I don't know, like the 1600s. I don't know, like we'd have to reach so far back to where this would be appropriate. I can't even think of, is there ever a time where this was funny, and also not intentionally racist. And I'd have to know like Chinese history and culture to know, like, was there ever a time when they walked into a room and a gong was hit at any point in like any of like the Ming dynasties or anything like that? It's like a baffling ask, because in order for you to say it was a different time period, you have to actually know contextually, okay, so what was happening during this time period? You're saying it was a different time period and we were racist. That's what we were. That's what it was. That's what you're saying, because the other stuff is, yes, I'm saying we're assholes. Like, they use words in this. I'm not using them, but they use words in 16 Candles that we don't use in today's content, that we don't produce anymore. And we've told our kids not to use and drop those words. So, but this is one of those things, because it's extra, because nobody actually walks into a room and a gong is hit, that actually feels like John Hughes went out of his way to perpetuate a racial stereotype. It's like Long Dug Dong was bad enough and we could have had a conversation about that, but then like there's a gong attached to it, which is a whole other thing. It's this whole other thing that makes me really, it puts like this blemish on my feelings about John Hughes as a director, even though I adore him. But this is written and directed. Like, he fully made this choice of his own volition. No one forced him to do this. He thought this was funny. This shows who he is more so than anybody else. More so than any of the other actors. I feel really bad for the actor who had to do this, but I'm sure he just wanted work. But damn, dude, representation. I know, like, in the 80s, it's tough to say that, because you're like, well, I was either going to do this or be like a ninja, like, those were my choices. So you're going to be in this or a martial arts movie. So, yeah, but the John Hughes effect here is very questionable on that. I won't let it drag the whole film down. Again, I didn't grow up with this film. This is me also looking back on it and being like, this is cringeworthy. It is. And I think people who grow up with it should look back on it and go, but damn, but damn that gong. It's bad enough that his name is what it is, but we didn't have to put emphasis on him by giving him a sound effect, you know? Um, so it's it's an interesting movie because it's got some Brat Packers. We got Molly Ringwald, Anthony Michael Hall, John Cusack also pops up in here, in a small role, which is really weird to see John. But I guess he had to start somewhere. Um, and we've also got Justin Henry, Academy Award nominee Justin Henry, which I thought was interesting because I actually don't think I've ever seen him do anything other than Kramer versus Kramer. I was just so that was probably the best part of 16 Candles for me, was adding something else to the Justin Henry filmography. So it wasn't just like, what else did he do? Oh, he just did this one thing? Okay. I mean, like, there are other things that he did in life. So, um, I'm sure the 80s soundtrack here is super cool. There was some stuff that, um, I recognized, some songs, obviously, that were, uh, cool, and I still recognize today. But I feel like it was probably a banger soundtrack for 1984, and I think teens went to this and related to what was happening at the time. I think this spoke to them, and I think that's why the film has stood the test of time and why people still watch it today. But damn, if we could do an edit of this film and get rid of those gong noises, that'd be great. It'd still be problematic. There would still be problems, and Gen Alpha would still be really angry at this film. I'm not saying it fixes the film or makes it perfect, but those gong noises are unnecessary, completely, because they have nothing to do with the film. That like, does anybody hear them in the film? Like, is he actually produce a gong noise? Because I don't think so. And the audio description definitely doesn't say he was. Because if he's walking around with a fucking gong, then that makes me even more pissed off. If he's doing that himself, he's holding up a gong and he's like, "Boom! I'm in the room now." Like, what the fuck? Anyway, so 16 Candles. I kind of wish Molly Ringwald's career had gone on. I felt like she had sort of what Julie Roberts had in the earlier age. She had a really strong young career, and it just didn't translate into growing up, into her getting offered the right adult parts. The difference, though, is I can't even really remember what Molly Ringwald was offered as an adult. Like, I only remember her doing teen films. I don't even remember her, like, awkwardly transitioning into adult films, like into, like, let's move out of the teen phase. Like, what am I going to do next? Because it doesn't work for everybody. There are a whole bunch of teen stars from our generation that couldn't transition. Uh, Jennifer Love Hewitt had a hard time doing it on screen. Sarah Michelle Gellar couldn't do it on screen. Lindsay Lohan arguably could not make the transition. They all tried. They all produced a film in which they were not a teenager, that required them to not be a teenager and be an adult. But yeah, they were just kind of met with whatever. But I think Molly Ringwald had a lot of charm, and I want to know what that film was. Like, what was her "I Know Who Killed Me"? What was that for her? That film I would be really interested in seeing. So, but this is problematic. It's not necessarily my generation. I will acknowledge that for a lot of people, this is a classic, and this is a film that they watch all the time. So good for you. It's cute. It's clever. It needs to be remade so that it's not. Yes, I would say that. I know. Somebody's like, "Oh my God, he just used the word remake." The right to, not Netflix. Do not just put this shit on Netflix with some random fucking director and a bunch of TikTok stars nobody's ever heard of. If you give this to the right director with the right stars, um, Millie Bobby Brown's starting to get a little too old for this shit, but there has to be somebody who could come along and you could update this, because the concept is cute and you can take the cringe stuff out of it and keep the plot, pay tribute to John Hughes and all that kind of stuff. The right director could pull this off, and the right cast. But anyway, that's what I think of your 16 Candles. It's got some issues. Anthony Michael Hall is, oh my God, he's got like a unconscious girl in the back seat of his car, and he's trying to get his friends to photograph it, and it's like, I mean, the problematic shit in this movie is just a bit much. You know, I mean, like, some of it is funny, and I think, like, we didn't need to necessarily lose that. Like, it's funny to have teens think that, like, getting a pair of girls' underwear is, like, somehow, like, I can see a whole bunch of, like, teen boys, like, that being, like, the pinnacle of a movie, even today. Being like, oh, well, how do I know that you actually made out with a girl? Well, you have to get her underwear, you know? And then, like, how do you go about that? Could still produce a funny scenario today, but problematically trying to look like this unconscious girl next to you. What's your date for anything? And that photo would get you some sort of street cred. Be like, look, man, look at this unconscious girl that's on my shoulder. You know, it's just like, I'm glad we got rid of some of this shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm glad we've moved on from some of this, because it does really send people the wrong message. And it's probably why we have a bunch of assholes running around right now, is because they were shown movies at the beginning that were like, yeah, it was totally normal. It was my dream to have an unconscious girl in the backseat of my car. I watched a lot of 16 Candles growing up. You know, it's just like, okay. Anyway, yeah, so I don't want to go too low, because I have to acknowledge the fact that this film has done the standing the test of time. And yes, it's not my teen film. I did not grow up on this. This is not my generation, so I'm not going to be as connected to it as other people. I think Molly Ringwald is charming. Anthony Michael Hall, obviously there's something there, and I understand why he goes on and has another career, even if his character is oddly problematic for a nerd. His character name is literally the Geek. Like, come on. Like, you should be the least problematic character in the movie. Like, but I'm struggling here on this one. I'll give 16 Candles a B, and that's me being very generous, and that's me also giving it a lot of weight on its classic. It's got a lot of cringe. It really does. It's not the only it's not like I've never seen a John Hughes film before. I just don't know what's up with this movie. But yeah, it's 40th anniversary celebration, yay, of a B movie. Very odd, but it was the first time, and it allowed me to watch it, so now I can say I've seen 16 Candles. I'm not sure if it's an achievement, but I've seen it. So I hope, let me know what you think about 16 Candles. You can be mad at me if you want, if I just trashed your teenage years into the ground, that's fine. But somebody's going to try to justify that gong noise, and there's no way to justify it. I can parse through all of the other things a lot better than I can the noise that has no context in the plot of the film. It's an extra noise. This doesn't need to be there. And then we can have conversations about everything else. But there's this one glaring thing that I can't get past. And yeah. So thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing, and I will see you guys on the other side.